Zara had never been more terrified in her life, stranded in an escape pod with a human. She had heard all the horror stories, how humans devour warmth, how they trap you in their grip, smother you with affection until you're nothing but an empty shell. The very idea of being stuck in close quarters with one felt like a death sentence, but now here she was in the cold, narrow pod with Carter, who was busy trying to act like everything was normal. Carter wasn't exactly what she expected. He wasn't a towering beast or a menacing figure. He was, well, awkward, a little rough around the edges maybe, but nowhere near the monster she had imagined. His dark eyes flicked nervously to her every so often, like he was equally unsure about this situation. His human face was, she realized, oddly expressive, especially when he smiled in a way that didn't look like he was about to tear her apart. Here, he said, offering a shiny silver blanket. It's cold in here, you'll need this. Zara froze. A blanket? She had heard about human blankets. They were supposedly one of the tools they used to ensnare others, wrapped tightly in one. They would trap you, squeeze the life out of you, or so the legend said, but this was different. The pod was cold, freezing. Even Zara had no choice but to accept, her trembling hands taking the blanket as if it were a weapon, one she wasn't sure how to use. Thank you, she muttered, barely able to speak over the pounding of her heart. Yeah, no problem, Carter said, not picking up on her anxiety. It's just, to keep you warm. You don't want to freeze, right? The words warm and freeze sent a chill down her spine. Warmth had always been associated with danger, with predators, with humans themselves. She had read about them, heard about them. They were insatiable, impossible to escape. Once they decided to smother you. Zara slowly unfolded the blanket, eyeing Carter's every move as if waiting for him to spring some kind of trap, but he just sat there, his eyes not quite meeting hers, as if he was trying to avoid being too forward. Are you sure this is safe? She asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Carter blinked. A safe? Yeah, it's just a blanket. Humans have been using them for centuries. We use them to keep warm. She narrowed her eyes. And you use them to consume your victims? Carter stared at her for a second, a confused frown spreading across his face. Consume my victims, he repeated, baffled. I don't what? Yeah, Zara continued, her mind still clouded by the old stories. Humans, you wrap people up in these blankets and take their warmth, drain them. Carter burst out laughing, loud enough to echo in the tiny pod. It was a short laugh, but it was a laugh all the same. His broad shoulders shook with it, and for a moment Zara couldn't help but be mesmerized by the absurdity of it. Wait, what? He said, still chuckling. You think I'm going to what? Suck your warmth out? I mean, I'm not a vampire, lady. Zara's face flushed with embarrassment. She'd heard about the strange rituals humans had, but this didn't make sense. Carter's laugh was almost contagious, and for a moment she let her guard down just a little. Still, she had to be cautious. If humans were so playful, they might also be dangerous. No, I mean, she hesitated. It's just, I've heard things about your species. Carter's eyebrows knitted together in confusion. Heard things? What things? Sarah shifted uncomfortably. That you smother people, take their warmth, feed on it. Carter leaned forward, placing his hands on his knees as he tried to control his amusement. No, we don't do that. We use blankets because it gets cold. It's literally just about staying warm. He shook his head, trying to explain it to her, but it was clear she wasn't following. Warmth, he added the word like it was some universal truth. Zara glanced down at the blanket again, skepticism still dancing in her mind. She wasn't sure what to believe, but something about Carter's complete cluelessness made her feel a little less afraid. Maybe he wasn't a monster after all, or maybe she was simply so scared of the unknown that she was making up stories in her head to explain her fear. Carter, seeing her still hesitant, sighed and rubbed the back of his neck, clearly trying to think of a way to make her feel comfortable. Okay, look, here's the deal, he began. I'm not a whatever you think I am. I'm just trying to help. If you don't want the blanket, fine. If you do, that's cool too. No weird predator stuff going on here. He paused, then added, I just want to make sure you're not freezing your tail off. Sarah stared at him for a long moment, her mind racing. He didn't sound threatening, quite the opposite actually, and yet she couldn't shake the lingering fear that somehow the warmth would consume her. Are you sure? She asked again, this time with a hint of hesitation. Carter nodded. I promise, if I was a monster I would have already. He stopped himself before he could finish the sentence, realizing just how bizarre that sounded. Zara blinked at him. Already? What? Nothing, he muttered. Forget I said anything. He cleared his throat awkwardly. Anyway, I'll leave you to it. You can wrap up in the blanket if you want. I'll go back to pretending I'm not a big idiot. Zara hesitated before she slowly unfolded the blanket, cautiously wrapping it around herself. It wasn't as suffocating as she Thought it would be. In fact, the warmth felt good, comforting even but the moment. She tucked herself and a new fear bubbled up. What if she got too used to it? What if she began to trust him? She quickly shoved that thought aside, deciding to focus on staying alive rather than on her escalating paranoia. Carter, still not noticing the internal struggle raging in her mind, sat back against the wall of the pod and yawned. He looked so ordinary. So human, just a guy trying to survive in a dangerous universe, no more monstrous than the next person. All right, well, I'll keep watch, Carter said, not really understanding that Zara wasn't just frightened of the cold but of his very presence. Zara took a deep breath, the warmth of the blanket almost like an anchor in the sea of her doubts, but she wasn't ready to let it go just yet. Humans were unpredictable, and until she knew for sure, she had to stay alert. I'll stay awake, she said quietly, still unsure of how to proceed, but maybe, just maybe, things wouldn't be so bad after all. This sets up the core tension and misunderstanding between Zara and Carter, introducing the human warmth/affection angle in a comedic yet grounded manner. The next sections would build on the humor, misunderstandings, and growing RT. The next few hours passed in an awkward silence, broken only by the occasional rustling of the blanket as Zara tried to get comfortable. Her mind was a mess of conflicting thoughts, her fear of the human, her need for warmth, and the strange feeling that maybe Carter wasn't the monster she had convinced herself he was. In the end, she couldn't decide which was worse, the cold or his smile. As the silence stretched, Carter shifted in his seat, clearly uncomfortable. He couldn't seem to sit still, constantly adjusting his position like he had 1,000 nervous habits. Zara's eyes narrowed. Humans were supposed to be unpredictable, full of hidden traps, yet here he was acting so normal she had half expected him to pounce on her the moment she let her guard down, but instead he seemed to be trying too hard not to do anything wrong. So Carter started, his voice breaking the silence. I guess this is awkward, huh? Zara stiffened immediately, on alert. What do you mean? I mean, he shifted again, clearly trying to choose his words carefully. We're stuck in a tiny pod together. No way around that. It's got to be weird for you. Sarah didn't know how to respond. He was right, of course, but there was something in his tone that made her feel oddly seen. For the first time, she realized that Carter might not be the predator she'd been told about. Sure, he was still a human, still from a species she'd been warned to fear, but maybe he wasn't exactly what she'd been expecting. You're not scared of me? She asked. Before she could stop herself, her voice tinged with surprise. Carter blinked. Scared of you? No, why would I be? You're not the one who's been freaking out about blankets after all. His lips quirked, though the smile didn't reach his eyes. Sarah fumbled for a reply, but her mouth was dry. Her instincts screamed at her to pull away, to keep him at arm's length. Humans were dangerous, especially ones who seemed too nice, but Carter wasn't acting like the predatory creatures she'd read about. In fact, he seemed almost clueless. You should be, she muttered. I could be a threat. Yeah, right. Carter chuckled. Sure, I believe you. He shook his head. Look, I get it. You're scared, that's normal, but you got to know I'm not going to hurt you. You don't have to keep up the whole I'm a dangerous alien act around me. Zara bristled, her instincts firing again. Did he really think she was pretending, or was he mocking her? I'm not pretending, she snapped. I know, Carter said, his tone softening. I didn't mean it like that, but seriously, you've got nothing to be afraid of. His eyes met hers, genuine in a way that was unsettling. I just want to make sure you're okay, that's it. Zara opened her mouth to protest, but the words stuck in her throat. She had no reason to believe him. Everything in her species history told her to run, to hide, to fear the unknown. But what if Carter wasn't like the stories? What if for once her assumptions were wrong? She couldn't trust him, but part of her didn't want to keep being afraid. Why are you helping me? She asked before she could stop herself, the question hanging between them like an unspoken challenge. Carter didn't hesitate. Because I'm human. We're kind of terrible at leaving people behind. It's not in our nature to just abandon someone when they're stuck in a bad situation. Zara's mind raced. What did he mean by that? Was this some kind of trap, some way of lulling her into a false sense of security, or was he being sincere? She wasn't sure, but she couldn't shake the feeling that this was different. Carter was different. She stared at him, trying to discern any sign of ulterior motive, but all she saw was the same awkward human, the one who couldn't sit still, who seemed nervous about being too close to her, who couldn't even seem to take the blanket back after offering it to her. In fact, now that she thought about it, he hadn't once tried to force her to do anything, hadn't pressured her in the slightest. Maybe humans really weren't all bad. Why do you think humans are so affectionate? Zara asked, her voice low and cautious. I mean, it's not exactly a good reputation. Carter blinked, caught off guard by the question. Affectionate? He repeated. You mean how we hug people and hold hands and stuff? Zara nodded. though she was unsure how to describe the particular kind of warmth humans seemed to offer, the one she feared most. It's uncomfortable, unnatural, Carter grinned. Yeah, it's probably weird when you've never experienced it before, but I mean it's not about control or anything. If that's what you're thinking, it's just we're social creatures, we bond with other people, makes us feel less alone. Zara blinked at him, processing his words. She couldn't imagine needing to be close to someone like that. The very idea made her stomach twist, but Carter seemed so genuine, so at ease with his strange affection, that she was almost tempted to believe him. I'm not used to it, she admitted, her voice hesitant. I've never had someone care for me. Carter's expression softened, and for the first time since they met she saw something other than uncertainty in his eyes. There was empathy, understanding. I get that, he said quietly. It's not easy to trust people, especially when you've been taught to think they'll hurt you, but I swear, Zara, I'm not like that. I just want to make sure you're safe. Zara felt a strange warmth spread through her chest, one that had nothing to do with the blanket. It wasn't the heat of fear or discomfort, it was something else entirely. It was confusing. She didn't want to need him, didn't want to admit that maybe Carter wasn't the monster she had feared him to be, so she said, her voice quieter now, what do we do now? Carter smiled, that same goofy, disarming smile that had somehow started to put her at ease. Well, now we wait for the rescue ship to show up and hope they don't get caught in some space traffic jam. In the meantime, we stay warm, talk a little, and try not to kill each other with awkwardness. Zara let out a quiet laugh, a sound that surprised both of them. She hadn't realized how much she needed it, needed this human to break the tension. Maybe she was starting to trust him after all. For now, though she wasn't ready to admit it, maybe, just maybe, the warmth she was feeling wasn't so bad after all. In this section, the bond between Zara and Carter deepens, breaking through the barriers of misunderstanding and fear. The tension between their cultures is acknowledged but slowly disarmed through humor, awkwardness, and the human warmth Carter provides. Zara begins to see that not all the stories she's heard about humans are true. There's something comforting in their strange affection. As the hours dragged on, the awkward tension between Zara and Carter began to shift. The silence that had once felt suffocating now seemed more like a shared understanding. They were stuck together, and there was nothing either of them could do about it. But somehow that realization brought a strange comfort. They weren't enemies, not anymore. Zara shifted in her seat, glancing over at Carter. He was staring out of the tiny viewport, clearly lost in thought. She couldn't help but study him. The human had a way of being both unnervingly still and hyper-aware at the same time. It was like he couldn't sit still because he was constantly second-guessing everything he did. It was almost endearing in a way, but it also reminded her that humans were utterly unpredictable. So she said, breaking the silence once more, do you always sit this close to people? Carter blinked, clearly taken aback by the question. What, sit close to people? He looked down at the space between them where the blanket was still shared in a somewhat awkward yet cozy manner. Not really, no, but I figured it was kind of a don't leave the alien to freeze to death thing. Zara couldn't suppress a laugh. You're so strange. Carter grinned, clearly relieved at her response. Yeah, I've been told, but you have to admit I'm kind of good at this whole warmth sharing thing. She rolled her eyes, though a smile tugged at the corner of her lips. If you say so, just don't get any ideas. I'm not the kind of alien you want to cuddle with. The tension between them was gone, replaced by the light-hearted banter they'd both been craving, but the conversation had a way of circling back to the same thing, his warmth there. Proximity, you know, Carter said after a long pause. I didn't really expect, well, any of this. I thought when I found you on that wrecked ship you'd be like, I don't know, vicious or something, but you're normal. Zara's eyes widened. Normal? What do you mean normal? Just, he fidgeted, running a hand through his hair. You're not what I expected. I mean, you're scared. Yeah, but you're not a killer. You're not some kind of savage beast out to destroy everything in your path. Zara stiffened. Offended? That's what you think of me, some beast? No, Carter quickly corrected himself. I didn't mean it like that. I just, he sighed, clearly struggling to articulate his thoughts. I don't know. I was prepared for danger, for a fight, but you're just scared, and I guess I can't wrap my head around how we got here. Zara crossed her arms, suddenly defensive. You think I'm some kind of helpless thing? No, I know that's not what I meant at all. Carter seemed to realize how badly he was digging himself into a hole. I just mean you're not like the stories I've been taught that aliens are, well, let's just say we don't exactly get the best press. I thought you tried to eat me or something, but now I'm starting to think I've been wrong about all of it. Zara stared at him for a long moment, her expression unreadable. Was he genuinely not afraid of her? She couldn't decide. His eyes were soft, full of confusion and Curiosity not fear. It felt strange, she wasn't used to this. No one had ever spoken to her like that, like she wasn't some weapon. You humans, she muttered under her breath, you think you know everything about other species. Yeah, well, turns out we don't, Carter said. With a self-deprecating chuckle, you might be dangerous, sure, but I think we're all a little dangerous, aren't we? I mean, look at me, I've been known to trip over my own feet. Zara couldn't help but snorted that the image of him tripping over his own feet was too much. She had to admit she was starting to appreciate the absurdity of his attempts to seem so human for all his awkwardness. There was something oddly charming about it. You're a mess, she teased, and yet, Carter shot back, his grin widening. Here I am keeping you warm. Who's the real monster now? Zara blinked at him, then rolled her eyes. You are so full of yourself, but you're still here, he said with a wink, clearly proud of his ability to crack a joke. And it's not like you're getting cold, right? Zara paused. He was right, she wasn't cold anymore. In fact, she felt warmer than she had in a long time, but it wasn't just the physical heat, it was something deeper. Something about Carter's willingness to make her laugh, to make her feel like she wasn't just a terrifying alien, she was a person. He was treating her like one, and that in itself was a novel experience. So she said after a beat, her voice quieter now, this whole warmth thing, it's really not as bad as I thought. See, Carter grinned again, told you just got to give it a shot. Humans aren't as bad as they're cracked up to be. Zara narrowed her eyes. You're lucky I'm stuck here with you. I'll take that as a compliment, he replied with mock sincerity, then added seriously, though I didn't think this would be easy. I mean, I thought I'd be fighting for my life in a minute. And now, she asked. Curiosity piqued now. Carter paused. Now I just hope we get rescued, and now I don't end up as your personal space heater for the rest of eternity. Zara laughed, but it was a strange light laugh, the kind of laugh she hadn't heard from herself in years. It felt good, and for the first time since she'd encountered him, she felt something warm growing between them, not just a physical warmth, but something else, something she wasn't quite ready to name. Well, she said, settling back against the seat, if you're lucky you might just survive the experience, but don't think this means I'm going to like you. Oh, I know, Carter replied with a wink, but I think you secretly do, and that's the real victory, isn't it? Zara shook her head, but this time the words didn't come with a sharp rebuke. Instead, they came with a quiet acceptance. I don't know if I like you, Carter, but you're definitely not the monster I thought you were. Yeah, he said, his grin softening. I'll take that. That's a win in my book. And as they sat there together, the reality of their situation finally started to sink in. Maybe they weren't so different after all, and maybe, just maybe, there was something to this human warmth after all. In this section, the characters continue to learn more about each other. The tension eases further, and Zara begins to see Carter not as a monster but as someone who was simply misunderstood. They bond over humor and shared vulnerability, paving the way for deeper connection and understanding. The humor is sharp, but it's also humanizing, allowing them both to be flawed and genuine. As the hours passed, the atmosphere between Zara and Carter seemed to shift from mere tolerance to a curious kind of camaraderie. The initial awkwardness had ebbed away, and now there was a strange understanding between them, a silent acknowledgement that they were both trapped in this peculiar situation, and that either of them was going anywhere anytime soon. Zara found herself growing increasingly comfortable with Carter's presence. She still didn't fully understand humans, but there was something about the way he carried himself, despite the obvious awkwardness, that made her feel oddly secure. And though she'd initially been terrified of his warmth, she found herself begrudgingly appreciative of it. There was no denying that it kept her from shivering in the cold, and his clumsy attempts to be kind weren't as unbearable as she had anticipated. So, Carter, she said, breaking the silence yet again, what is it you humans do for fun? He blinked, clearly caught off guard by the question. What do we do for fun? Well, we watch movies, play games, hang out with friends, that kind of stuff. Zara tilted her head, considering his answer. Movies, are they like holograms? She asked, intrigued. She had heard of humans using holograms for entertainment, but she'd never seen one herself. Yeah, pretty much, Carter replied, but they're not as high-tech as you'd think. Sometimes they're just really low-budget and ridiculous, but we watch them anyway. It's kind of a tradition. It's all about just letting go of the serious stuff for a bit, you know. Sarah raised an eyebrow. Letting go of the serious stuff? Yeah, it's not all about war and survival and being the best, Carter said with a shrug. Sometimes we just need to laugh at something stupid like bad sci-fi movies or really bad action heroes. Zara frowned. Bad sci-fi movies? Carter grinned. Oh yeah, they're a thing, trust me. It's like you watch them and you just wonder how anyone thought they were a good idea, but that's the point. You're not supposed to Take it seriously, it's supposed to be ridiculous and it's fun, you know it lets you forget about all the things that usually stress you out for a moment. Zara just stared at him, completely baffled. She had a hard time imagining that anyone would willingly sit through something intentionally terrible, but something about Carter's excitement was contagious. So humans like bad things? She asked, skeptical. Well, not everything bad, he clarified, but sometimes yeah. It's the whole point of so bad it's good, like if something is just absurd enough, you start to enjoy it because it's so over the top. Zara let out a soft laugh. That sounds strange. It is strange, Carter agreed with a grin, but that's kind of what makes it fun. Sometimes we need to let ourselves be ridiculous. It's like, well, it's like what we're doing now. What? Zara looked at him confused. I mean, he said, gesturing between them, we're stuck in this tiny space together trying to stay warm, and all we can do is make the best of it. It's kind of ridiculous, right? But we're both still here and we're not killing each other. I think that's pretty funny. Zara thought about it for a moment, then cracked a smile. She couldn't deny that he had a point. This entire situation was absurd. She had expected the human to try to eat her, or at least be some kind of monster. Instead, he was just an awkward, clueless guy who genuinely wanted to help, and in that strange way it almost felt comforting. Like he wasn't the terrifying, warming human she had been warned about. He was normal. Well, Zara said, crossing her arms, I guess it's not the worst thing in the universe. Carter gave her an exaggerated look of mock offense. Hey, you're lucky I'm saving your life. You don't get to throw shade at me just because I'm offering warmth. Zara rolled her eyes, but there was no malice in her gesture. Fine, fine, she said, leaning back in her seat. I'll admit it, your warmth isn't as horrible as I imagined. I might even enjoy it just a little bit. Carter's grin widened. See, I knew you'd come around. I'm just too good at this. Sarah snorted, unable to hold back a laugh. You're ridiculous, yeah, he said with a wink, but you're not complaining. And with that, they both lapsed into another comfortable silence. It wasn't the kind of silence that came from awkwardness or tension, but the kind that comes from two people, alien and human, sharing a moment of understanding. Neither of them had the answers, but maybe, just maybe, they didn't need them. They had each other, and in this strange confined space that was enough. As the hours stretched on, Zara found herself thinking more and more about the human next to her. He was not what she had expected. He wasn't the monster the stories had told her about. He wasn't perfect, not by any means, but he was human, and maybe, just maybe, there was something special about that. She glanced over at him, catching him glancing at her out of the corner of his eye. His grin was goofy but warm. She had a sudden odd desire to return it, to let go of the fear she had carried with her for so long. Carter, she said softly, her voice more serious than it had been before. Yeah, he turned to her, his expression curious. Zara hesitated for a moment before speaking again. Maybe you're not as bad as I thought. Maybe I misjudged humans, all of you. Carter's eyes widened for a moment as if unsure of how to respond, but then his grin returned brighter than ever. See, I told you we weren't so bad. And as the silence returned, it was no longer awkward or uncomfortable. It was the kind of silence that came with the warmth of shared understanding, and Zara realized for the first time in her life that she wasn't afraid anymore, not of the human, not of her situation, and not of the unknown that lay ahead. Maybe warmth wasn't such a bad thing after all. In this section, the characters further bond, finding humor in their situation and recognizing that they are not so different after all. The playful back and forth continues, with the comedy rooted in the absurdity of their shared experience. The double meaning of warmth is explored further, while the emotional connection between them deepens. The section maintains a balance of humor and tenderness, grounding the absurdity of the situation in a growing sense of trust and mutual